Before we dive in, let's get this out of the way. If you love classic wrestling, if you're here for deep dives into the past, and if you want to see more issues like this broken down, then hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want early access to future episodes, consider becoming a member. Now let's go back to August 1963 when wrestling was still presented as a legitimate sport. Champions carried themselves like real-world athletes, and the pages of Wrestling World were one of the only ways fans could stay connected to the action. This issue, it's packed. We've got Thesz reclaiming his title from Buddy Rogers, a rare early look at Giant Baba's struggles in America, a spotlight on women's wrestling with Kathy Starr, and even a kayfabe debate on what actually makes a wrestler dirty. This is pro wrestling history in its purest form. So let's turn the page and step into the world of 1963. Let's start with the big one. This issue is built around Thesz's NWA championship win over Buddy Rogers. The article is written as a first-hand account from Thesz himself, describing how he out-wrestled Rogers to regain the most prestigious championship in the sport. And the magazine plays up Thesz as a pure wrestler, while Rogers is painted as the flamboyant showman, more style than substance. They even make sure to hammer home that the NWA title is the only world title that matters, which is funny because we know that at this point, Vince McMahon Sr. was already making moves with Bruno Sammartino in the WWF. It's fascinating to read this now, knowing that the industry was already starting to shift away from the style of wrestling into something more entertainment-driven. This might be the most pro wrestling magazine article ever written. The entire thing is about how Wilbur Snyder isn't just a great wrestler. He's a heartthrob. Women love him. Jealous guys try to fight him in bars. He's a gentleman outside the ring, but a killer inside it. Classic babyface booking positioned the guy as the ultimate clean-cut athlete, but also make sure the ladies are swooning. The best part, they hype his abdominal stretch as the guillotine. You don't hear that today. Now it's just he's got the stretch locked in. But in 1963, they sold it like a finishing move that could end careers. Now, this is one of the most historically fascinating pieces in the issue. This article covers Giant Baba's early struggles in America before he became a legend in Japan. It describes how lonely he was, emphasizing that his size, 6 feet 10 inches, 319 pounds, made him an outsider. It talks about how Rikidozan convinced him to wrestle after a failed baseball career. And there's a sadness to it. Baba is depicted as a wandering giant in a strange land with very few friends. Looking back, we know that Baba would change wrestling forever in Japan, but this article is a rare window into his early uncertain years. Also, can we talk about how they imply that America didn't have beds big enough for him? Because that's the most 1960s wrestling journalism thing ever. This one stood out because, let's be real, women's wrestling barely got coverage in the 1960s. But here's Kathy Starr, getting compared to Killer Kowalski in terms of toughness. The article makes it clear she's not just a pretty face, she's a bruiser. They hype her up as a fearsome competitor, someone who doesn't care if she's liked. And for 1963, that was a big deal. It's refreshing to see a wrestling magazine actually taking a women's wrestler seriously at a time when most wouldn't even mention them. Up next, Rikidozan versus Freddie Blassie, a brutal war. This edition of Wrestling World from August 1963 highlights one of the most legendary and violent wrestling encounters of the time, Rikidozan versus classy Freddie Blassie. The images and coverage of this match captured the brutality in all its rawness. One notable moment shows Rikidozan with one eye swollen shut, suffering from the repeated forearm smashes delivered by Blassie. This wasn't just any standard match. It was a battle of national pride, as Rikidozan was Japan's most beloved wrestling hero, and Blassie was the brash American villain, infamous for his arrogance and dirty tactics. The fight was filled with classic heel work from Blassie, who was seen gouging Rikidozan's eyes, raking his face, and applying painful holds while jawing at both his opponent and the audience. Rikidozan, however, turned the tide, using his renowned chops to weaken Blassie. The crowd, already on edge, exploded with cheers as he began mounting his comeback. In a dramatic finish, Rikidozan managed to secure a submission hold that forced Blassie into a desperate plea for mercy. The magazine emphasizes that Rikidozan's victory wasn't just another win. It was a symbolic triumph for Japan over an aggressive foreign invader. This battle helped solidify Rikidozan's status as a national icon in Japan and cemented Blassie's reputation as one of wrestling's most despised villains. Another fascinating feature in this issue is about the mysterious masked wrestler El Medico II, who carried on the legacy of the original El Medico. The article dives deep into the lore surrounding his identity, secrecy, and impact on wrestling. The original El Medico had been a massive star in Texas and Mexico, pioneering the devastating move known as the Brainbuster. His sudden passing in 1960 left a void, but in 1962 a second El Medico appeared, claiming to carry on the tradition. El Medico II was highly skilled and methodical, maintaining a strict regimen both in the gym and intellectually, as he was actively learning English while competing. His matches were intense, with one particular battle against Sailor Art Thomas standing out. Unable to reach the much taller Thomas's head, Medico II cleverly targeted his knee with brutal elbow strikes, ultimately taking him down for a victory. There was significant speculation about his true identity, but the magazine notes that it was one of wrestling's best-kept secrets. He never removed his mask in the dressing room, always posting a guard outside his shower to ensure privacy. While American fans might not have recognized his face, in Mexico and across Europe, he was instantly known. El Medico II's journey wasn't just about in-ring success. It was about proving he could live up to the legend of his predecessor. And by all accounts, he did. In addition, Every Town is the Same. A story about how wrestlers live on the road and how every arena starts to blur together. Doug Gilbert, Nice Guys Can Finish First. A profile on a wrestler who defied the bad guys always win trope. Fanland and letters to the editor. Always a highlight in these magazines, featuring passionate letters from fans debating rankings, calling for their favorites to get title shots, and defending their heroes. One fan even complains about never seeing match results in magazines, something that would become much more common later on. So what did we learn from the August 1963 issue of Wrestling World? Lou Thesz was still the real wrestler's champion. Giant Baba's journey in America was anything but easy. Wilbur Snyder was basically the wrestling version of James Bond. Women's wrestling was getting some long overdue respect. This magazine is a time capsule into a world where kayfabe was absolute. Wrestling was presented as a sport, and the fans ate it up. If you enjoyed this trip back in time, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe. And if you want early access to more episodes, join the channel for exclusive content. Until next time, keep your magazines mint and never tap out on history.